You've been told that walking away means failure, that leaving something behind, be it a relationship, a job, a belief system, is weakness, that quitting is for cowards. But what if I told you that this is one of the greatest lies we've inherited from a culture obsessed with control and appearances? Carl Jung didn't believe in giving up for no reason, but he did believe in walking away for the right reason, and that reason is your soul. What if walking away is not about escape, but about initiation? Not about running, but about returning to the self, to something more real, more honest, and more sacred than the roles you were forced to play. There's an art to walking away, and Jung understood it long before the modern world tried to sell it to you in Instagram quotes and trendy podcasts. This video will not be a soft whisper. It will not be another surface-level self-love speech. This will go deeper, into the raw, uncomfortable truth that no one tells you about walking away, because most people are too afraid to even look. The real danger isn't walking away. It's staying in what is killing your spirit. We all have things we cling to out of habit, relationships that no longer feel alive, careers that numb our soul, versions of ourselves that we outgrew a long time ago, and yet we stay. We rationalize, we pretend. Why? Because we're afraid of what happens if we finally say no, afraid of what we'll lose, who will disappoint, and how empty it might feel without the familiar patterns we once called home. Jung would call this the shadow at work, the hidden parts of our psyche that sabotage us quietly by convincing us to stay small, comfortable, disconnected. But what if staying is the actual danger? What if leaving is the most honest thing you've ever done? When Jung spoke of individuation, the journey of becoming your truest self, he wasn't talking about a peaceful walk in the forest. He meant confrontation, crisis, separation from everything that is not aligned with the inner truth. Individuation often begins the moment you walk away, not because you're done, but because you're finally ready to begin. And no one tells you how hard this will be, how confusing, how lonely. They don't talk about the nights you'll cry over leaving people who didn't choose you, or the guilt you'll carry for choosing yourself. But here's what Jung knew. The pain of walking away is real, but the price of staying asleep is much higher. Walking away is a sacred act of self-respect, but it requires you to kill the version of you that needed to be liked, needed to be approved of, needed to be enough for people who never saw you fully. Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and becoming that person will cost you every false identity you've ever worn to survive. So the question is not, should I walk away? The question is, what am I sacrificing by staying? This isn't just about toxic people or jobs. It's about your own habits, your own loyalty to stories that were never yours to carry. Some of us are addicted to suffering, addicted to being the hero, addicted to proving our worth, and walking away, that feels like giving up the mission. But Jung would say, maybe the mission was never yours to begin with. Maybe it was programmed into you by a wounded parent, a fearful society, a religious guilt complex. Maybe you're not abandoning anything, but recovering something sacred, yourself. So here's the truth you won't hear on mainstream self-help channels. Walking away will not feel empowering at first. It will feel like death. The death of who you were and the birth of who you really are. It will feel like betrayal to your past self, to people who expected you to play a role forever. But real transformation begins where roles end, and no one can tell you when it's time. Only your soul knows. Only that quiet voice inside that says, this isn't me anymore. And the longer you silence that voice, the more numb you become. You will be judged for walking away. Make peace with that now. People will not understand your path because it threatens the safety of theirs. They'll call you selfish, unstable, unrealistic. But you know what's truly selfish? Asking someone to die inside so that others feel comfortable. You were not born to carry everyone's expectations like a weight on your back. You were born to become, to evolve, to listen to the silent compass within you and follow it, even when it leads you into the unknown. This is the art of walking away. It's not about escape, it's about alignment. It's about becoming whole. So if you're at a crossroads right now, if something in your life feels heavy, lifeless, or just wrong, this is your sign. Not to make a reckless leap, but to listen, to go within, to feel what your body has been trying to tell you, what your intuition has been screaming in whispers. Walking away isn't a decision, it's a process, a shedding, a return. And this video will take you through that journey, from fear to grief to clarity to peace. Not with cliches, but with the raw psychological truth that Jung spent his life uncovering, because no one told you this, but you needed to hear it. And now that you have, what will you do with it? You've probably heard the phrase, you teach people how to treat you, but no one tells you what that really means. It means that every time you tolerate disrespect, you reinforce it. Every time you minimize your pain to make someone else comfortable, you teach them that your needs can be ignored. And every time you stay in a place your soul has outgrown, you teach yourself that your truth doesn't matter. Carl Jung understood that most of us don't live authentic lives. We live rehearsed performances. We perform who we think we should be. We perform success, happiness, love. But when you begin to walk away from the performance, when you begin to strip off the mask, something terrifying happens. You meet the real you. And here's the part no one talks about. The real you might not be who you thought. You might discover that you don't want what you were taught to want, that your goals weren't yours to begin with, that the person you built was a response to trauma, rejection, fear. And when that realization hits, walking away becomes not just a choice, but a necessity. Because if you don't walk away from the life you built to survive, you'll never find the life that allows you to thrive. Jung called this the false self, the ego construct that forms to help us navigate the world. But he also believed in something deeper, the self, the center of your total being, the part of you connected to meaning, wholeness, and destiny. The journey to that self often begins with a crisis. Something cracks, a job ends, a partner leaves, a truth you've been avoiding erupts, and suddenly you're standing in the ruins of a life you thought was yours. That's the moment most people panic. They scramble to rebuild the same life, the same patterns, the same distractions. But some of us, we stop. We look around. We see the rubble for what it is, freedom. And that's where the walk begins. Walking away isn't glamorous. It's not a viral TikTok moment with a sassy song in the background. It's sitting in your apartment alone at 3 a.m. crying into a journal because you've just cut ties with someone who never really saw you, and now you're terrified that no one ever will. It's quitting the job that was killing your spirit and realizing you have no plan, just a gut feeling and a strange sense of relief. It's deleting the number, blocking the contact, unfollowing the person, and then grieving not just them, but the version of you who needed them. And here's where Jung's wisdom becomes your anchor. He believed that this descent into chaos was not a mistake, it was a necessary passage. In alchemy, it's called nigredo, the blackening, the death of form. In psychology, it's the breakdown before the breakthrough. You must die to your illusions before you can be reborn to your essence. And if you avoid this death, if you cling to what's falling apart, you only delay your arrival to the self. So how do you walk away in a world that tells you to stay loyal at all costs? You redefine loyalty. You realize that the first promise you ever made was to yourself. Not to your parents, not to your boss, not even to your past self, but to the truth inside you that never changes. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That doesn't happen by staying. That happens by stepping into the unknown, the uncomfortable, the uncontrollable. And let's be clear, people will not celebrate your choice, especially the ones who benefited from your silence, especially the ones who liked you better when you played small. They'll call your awakening a phase, a breakdown, a betrayal. But here's what they won't tell you. Most people don't want you to heal, because your healing reveals their unhealed wounds, your freedom exposes their chains, your honesty threatens their comfort. That's why walking away is an act of courage. It's not just about leaving people or situations. It's about leaving the version of you that made everyone else feel safe. The agreeable one, the loyal one, the overachiever, the people pleaser, the one who smiled through pain. That version of you served its purpose, it kept you alive. But now it's time to live. Walking away is an invitation to live a life that feels like truth, and truth is not always pleasant. Sometimes it's lonely, sometimes it's chaotic, sometimes it burns away everything you thought you were. But underneath that fire is something sacred. the self. The one Jung spent his life trying to understand. The self doesn't live in your image. It doesn't care about your followers, your title, your paycheck. The self cares about alignment, wholeness, meaning. And once you touch that frequency, you can't pretend anymore. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what your soul knows. That's why walking away is irreversible. Once you begin the journey, even if you try to go back, it won't feel the same. The relationship you tolerated will feel unbearable. The job you used to push through will drain you. The role you used to play will feel like a costume made for someone else. That's not a problem. That's evolution. You're not broken. You're breaking open. So what now? How do you walk away with grace, not resentment? With wisdom, not recklessness? Jung would say by integrating, not rejecting. You don't demonize your past. You don't shame the old you. You thank them. You mourn them. And then you release them. Integration means carrying the lesson without dragging the wound. It means remembering who you were while choosing who you're becoming. It also means setting boundaries, not just with others, but with yourself. No more explaining your intuition to people who don't want to understand. No more shrinking your truth to fit into someone else's comfort zone. No more betraying yourself to maintain the illusion of harmony. Walking away isn't just physical, it's energetic. It's a decision to stop leaking your power into dead spaces. Because here's the secret Jung knew but rarely said aloud. When you walk away from what drains you, you don't become empty. You become available. Available for the people, the opportunities, the experiences that match your soul, not your trauma. You create space, and space is not emptiness. Space is invitation. So ask yourself, what am I full of right now? Fear, guilt, obligations. If you're overflowing with things that don't serve you, how can life pour anything new into you? Sometimes walking away is about creating the sacred emptiness, a blank canvas, a quiet field, a moment of silence where something new can finally speak. This is the art of walking away, and it's not something you master in one night. It's something you practice with every decision, every boundary. Every time you choose truth over comfort, alignment over approval, self over ego, you become the artist of your own becoming. So if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. If you've been scared to take that step, this is your permission. Not from me, from the part of you that's always known, from the voice that says there's more. More to life, more to you. And it begins the moment you stop trying to fix what's breaking and start walking toward what's calling. What happens when you finally walk away? There's a moment, sometimes brief, sometimes endless, when the silence hits. No noise, no chaos, no distractions. Just you. At first it can feel like peace, but then something deeper begins to stir, a wave of grief. Grief for the years you lost trying to be someone else. Grief for the dreams that weren't yours, but you chased anyway. Grief for the version of you that had to perform in order to be loved. And here's what Jung would tell you in that moment. Don't run from the grief. Sit with it. Because what you're grieving isn't weakness, it's transformation. You're shedding layers, masks, identities. And that process, while liberating, is also a death. Not a physical one, but a psychic one. The ego resists it. It wants to rebuild, to reattach, to re-identify. It says, let's go find another job, another partner, another distraction. But the soul doesn't want that. The soul wants integration, stillness, truth. And truth doesn't come in the noise, it emerges in the quiet. This is where you meet your shadow. Jung's shadow concept isn't just about darkness, it's about the parts of yourself you've exiled, the anger you suppress, the desires you hide, the needs you disown, the potential you fear. Walking away unearths all of it. When you stop projecting onto others, stop blaming your environment, and start looking inward, you realize it wasn't just the world that was misaligned, it was you. And now you're in the void. Jung described the void not as emptiness, but as the fertile ground of rebirth. It's where the new self begins to take shape, not from the external expectations, but from inner knowing. And this knowing is quiet, subtle. It doesn't shout, it whispers, write that, move there, call them, let it go. But to hear those whispers, you have to stop chasing validation. You have to become radically honest with yourself. Are you willing to disappoint others in order to stay true to you? That's the real walk. Not across cities, but across psychological landscapes, across belief systems, across internalized shame. It's easy to walk away from a bad relationship. Harder to walk away from your identity as the savior. Easy to quit a toxic job. Harder to release your addiction to achievement. Easy to leave the party. Harder to sit with the loneliness that follows. That's why so many return, not because the old life fits, but because the new life hasn't fully formed. And in the in-between, the uncertainty, the ego panics. It says, go back, settle, apologize, shrink. But if you can endure that space, if you can stay a little longer in the wilderness, something begins to shift. You stop asking, who do they want me to be? And you start asking, who have I always been? And the answers aren't always pretty. Sometimes you see that you've been manipulative, people-pleasing, performative. Sometimes you realize your whole sense of self-worth was built on being needed, praised, admired. Sometimes you see that your kindness was compliance, your loyalty was fear, your success was compensation. These revelations don't destroy you, they free you, because only what's false can die. Jung believed that the purpose of suffering wasn't punishment, it was revelation. It strips away illusion, it confronts you with reality, not the reality society sells, but your inner truth, the one that's been buried under expectations, roles, trauma. And the deeper you go, the more you realize your walk away wasn't just from people, places, or positions. It was from a version of reality that kept you asleep. You're waking up. But awakening isn't blissful, it's brutal. At first, it's realizing you were complicit in your own pain, that no one was coming to save you because you were the one you were waiting for. It's confronting the fact that you abandoned yourself long before anyone else did. And then, gently, slowly, you begin to return to your body, to your instincts, to your creativity, to your boundaries, to yourself. And here's the miracle. The more you return to yourself, the less you need to be understood. You stop explaining your choices. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. You stop needing applause. You begin to enjoy solitude. You laugh without performing. You create without the need for perfection. You listen, not just to others, but to your own nervous system. You rest when you're tired. You say no without guilt. You say yes without fear. This is not rebellion, it's realignment. And in this space, people begin to show up, but not the ones you chased. Not the ones who fed your ego, the ones who see your soul, the ones who aren't triggered by your strength, the ones who celebrate your clarity. These people don't need you to shrink. They don't need you to suffer to prove your love. They meet you where you are, and they're doing their own work too. This is the reward of the walk. Resonance. You attract what you've become, not what you pretend to be, not what you market, not what you script, but what you embody. And embodiment is the final stage of Jung's individuation process. It's not about arriving at a perfect version of yourself. It's about allowing all parts of you to coexist in harmony. The shadow, the light, the fear, the courage, the past, the potential. You stop editing yourself. You begin to live integrated. And when that happens, walking away no longer feels like loss. It feels like alignment. It's not about abandoning people. It's about returning to your path. It's not about cutting everyone off. It's about creating energetic clarity. It's not about proving anything. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs to. And that's the secret. The strongest people you know, they're not hardened. They're healed. They've walked away, not from love but toward it. Not from responsibility but toward integrity. Not from others but toward their own center. And now they radiate. Because when you stop performing and start embodying, your energy becomes undeniable. So keep walking, not because you're broken, but because you're becoming whole. Walking away is not an act of abandonment, it's a rite of passage. And yet, even when we think we've walked away physically, emotionally, mentally, we often remain entangled. In thoughts, in guilt, in what-ifs. Because true walking away isn't measured by distance, it's measured by detachment. Carl Jung called it psychic emancipation. He saw the self not as an isolated ego, but as a totality, conscious and unconscious, integrated and autonomous. To truly walk away is to no longer be emotionally enslaved by the old system, whether that system was a family pattern, a cultural belief, or a psychological complex. The chains aren't always visible, but they're felt. In your body, in your anxiety, in the way your stomach clenches when you say no, in the guilt you carry for setting boundaries. These are the signs. The past is still speaking through your nervous system. So how do you break the spell? You walk away energetically. You walk away vibrationally. You stop participating in the game, even if the players beg you to come back. And this part is critical. When you walk away in truth, you must do so without resentment. Otherwise, you're still hooked, still trying to prove something, still caught in the drama triangle of victim, rescuer, and persecutor. Jung warned, the moment you make someone your enemy, you've projected your shadow onto them. They're not the enemy, they're the mirror. And that's what this path is, the art of mirror breaking. Not literally, but symbolically. You no longer let others define your worth. You no longer outsource your identity. You begin to withdraw the projections. You see your parents not as heroes or villains, but as humans. You see your ex not as a curse, but as a catalyst. You see the systems around you not as gods, but as structures. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. Your sight changes. You begin to feel subtle energy. Words affect you differently. You crave depth, not drama. Solitude, not stimulation. Truth, not tension. But with this shift comes a new challenge, loneliness. Not because you're alone, but because you're no longer emotionally accessible to the same people. Conversations that once thrilled you feel shallow. Environments you once tolerated feel suffocating. You're not better than anyone, but you're no longer willing to betray yourself just to belong. This is the spiritual detox phase. It's disorienting. You might cry without knowing why. You might laugh at things you used to fear. You might grieve your old self who tried so hard to be liked, to be good, to be safe. But good was a cage. Safe was a performance. And now, you're free. And here's the paradox. When you no longer need connection, you create the space for true connection. When you stop needing to be seen, you become visible. When you stop chasing love, you radiate it. That's the magnetic shift. Jung called it the individuation process, but others might call it soul maturity. You become your own center of gravity, no longer pulled by validation, no longer pushed by fear. And when you live from that center, your boundaries change. Not because you read a book about boundaries, but because your nervous system won't tolerate anything else. You no longer explain your worth. You no longer overextend to earn affection. You walk into a room and know who's safe, who's not, who's real, who's pretending, and you honor that knowing. Even if it costs you comfort, even if it costs you community, even if it costs you the illusion of connection. Because you've learned, connection that costs your authenticity is not connection, it's a transaction. So you walk. You walk not to escape, but to remember. You walk not in anger, but in clarity. You walk not to abandon others, but to return to yourself. And that walk reconfigures your life. You begin to attract differently. Opportunities arise that match your frequency, not your fear. People enter who see you without your mask. Creativity flows because you're no longer blocked by shame. Peace becomes your default, not your prize. And this peace, it confuses people. They wonder why you don't react the same way, why you don't take the bait, why you don't defend yourself. They think you've become cold, but in truth you've become clear. You no longer seek to convince, convert, or conform. You allow others their path. You take yours. No competition, no comparison, just clarity, just alignment. This is power, not dominance, but presence. The kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself, the kind of power that walks into a room and makes the energy settle. That's not ego. That's embodiment. You've integrated the shadow, healed the inner child, reparented the abandoned self. You've crossed the threshold. You've become the guide you were looking for. And now you can truly serve, not from martyrdom, but from overflow. But even here the walk continues, because walking away isn't a one-time act. It's a lifestyle. You walk away from limiting beliefs, from codependent dynamics, from outdated versions of you, from inner criticism, from generational patterns, from trauma loops. Every day you choose, contraction or expansion, illusion or truth, fear or freedom. And the more you choose truth, the lighter you become, not naive, not passive, but light because you've transmuted your pain. This is what Jung meant by the alchemical process, turning lead into gold. Not externally, but internally, turning shame into compassion, fear into presence, loss into wisdom. And that wisdom, earned, not given, is what allows you to walk with grace, with kindness, with boundaries like rivers, soft in sound but unmovable in direction. And now Now you become a space, a presence. You don't force others to change, you become the change. You model wholeness, and from that wholeness you influence, not with pressure, but with truth. And the truth is this: you are allowed to outgrow what you once thought was essential. You are allowed to walk away from roles you were praised for. You are allowed to become unfamiliar to those who knew the performative you. You are allowed to make decisions that no longer need defending. You are allowed to live your life as art, not apology. Walking away, what Carl Jung wanted you to know and know on final step in the art of walking away is not walking at all. It's standing still, in your own truth. No more running, no more chasing, no more escaping, just being, just breathing, just existing in full alignment with who you really are. That's the part they don't tell you. Because walking away isn't about distance. It's about presence. You've walked away from dysfunction. You've released the need to be understood. You've let go of the fantasy that others will change. You've surrendered the hope that your past will rewrite itself. And now, you face the void. This void is not emptiness. It's potential. But it feels terrifying. Because without the old roles, without the familiar pain, without the identity that was built around pleasing and proving, who are you? You are possibility. You are presence. You are power, not forceful, not loud, not performative, but quiet, stable, and grounded. Carl Jung called this stage returning to the self. Not the self that was conditioned to obey, not the self that was shaped to please, but the self with a capital S, the original blueprint, the one that existed before the wounding, before the masks, before the noise. And here's where life starts anew. You begin to make choices not from trauma, but from truth. You no longer ask, what do they want me to do, but instead, what feels right in my body. You no longer wait for permission, you grant it to yourself. You reclaim your time, your energy, your voice, and you begin to build. Not from desperation, but from vision. Your relationships shift, they become cleaner, clearer, kinder. Not perfect, nothing is, but real. You no longer tolerate emotional chaos as proof of love. You no longer confuse anxiety with attraction. You no longer chase people who breadcrumb your worth. You set the table and let the aligned come to eat. And not everyone will. Some will say you've changed. Some will say you're selfish. Some will project their fears onto your freedom. Let them, because what they see in you, they haven't yet allowed in themselves. Your liberation triggers their limitations, but your job isn't to shrink for their comfort. Your job is to hold your ground with love. Not defensiveness. Not arrogance, but love. Because love isn't always soft. Sometimes love is spacious. Sometimes love says, I release you. Sometimes love walks away so that truth can enter. And the truth is, your life is your message, not your words. Not your posts, not your performance, your presence, your energy, your boundaries, your decisions. You walk away not to abandon, but to become. You walk away not to escape, but to expand. You walk away not to punish, but to protect your peace. And in that walking, in that silence, in that stillness, you speak louder than ever. Because the most powerful people in the world are not the loudest, they are the clearest, they are the most grounded. They are the ones who can sit in discomfort without flinching, the ones who can say no without guilt, the ones who can leave without explanation. And here is the final paradox. When you truly master the art of walking away, you walk differently forever. You carry yourself differently. You stop trying to be enough because you already are. You stop waiting for closure because you give it to yourself. You stop hoping others will see your worth because you've remembered it. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. And in that space, something magical happens. You begin to attract what's truly meant for you, not what your ego wants, not what your wounds chase, but what your soul is aligned with. This is when synchronicities appear. This is when ease enters. This is when the universe responds to your vibration, not your begging, not your striving, but your embodiment. Carl Jung once said, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. You've walked away from the noise outside, now you walk into the clarity within. And here's where the real journey begins. It's not glamorous, it's not linear, it's not always fun, but it's real, and it's yours, and it's free. So walk. Walk slowly, walk gently, walk honestly, and don't look back. Not in regret, not in anger, not in longing, because the version of you who begged to stay was never who you really were. They were just the placeholder, the survival self, the actor on the stage. And now the performance is over. Now you write your own script. Now you design your own rhythm. Now you choose who enters your sacred space, not based on familiarity, but on frequency. This is what Jung tried to teach us. That individuation is not separation, it's integration. That walking away is not abandonment, it's initiation. That leaving the old is not failure, it's alignment. That losing yourself is not the end, it's the beginning. So go, not to prove anything, not to rebel, but to become. And when you do, when you truly walk away, you won't need applause. You'll hear silence, and in that silence, you'll hear something else. Your own voice, clear, certain, sacred, free.